As Warden Moonwax set down the Quasar 920XE Deluxe Model short-range runabout on the surface of Altair 5, his heart thundered and his nerves went electric. This planet had loomed large over his youth. It was a strategic threat, a well-woven lie, and a frightful fascination that had never quite faded. Altair 5 was the bedtime story he'd begged to hear. It was the nightmare he woke from, sweating. Now he was all grown up, and Warden Moonwax, scientist, adventurer, and spirited Uninet personality, was coming to kick Fear's ass. Yes, he'd already proven that Zarquan 12's Feggy the Three-Horned Gobgrinder was a fable born of powerful imagination and weak eyesight. Warden had shown viewers across the universe that Calderia's razor-toothed stang whistle was actually a hermit with the GCU's most chronic snoring problem. Warden had sniffed out the pungent perk beast of POW 4 and aired the truth about its sulfur spring origins. Slipping into his acid-resistant outerwear, he flipped on his pocket visu and turned it to his camera-ready face. I'm Warden Moonwax, and you're watching Myth and Myth Taken. I am just about to step onto Altair 5, the planet that spawned a million screams from progeny around the GCU. Join me today as we explore the truth of this strange world and boldly probe into the birth canal of terror. He settled the handheld visu into his stabilizing harness, turned on the landscape lighting vest, flipped on his infrared video, powered up the chemical emission sensors, initiated the magnetic field assessment blippy lights, and secured his XJ-33 hand laser for personal safety. He took 2 deep breaths, clicked his safety helmet into place, made sure his protective suit was tight at the neck, and lowered the ramp from his ICV, leaving the remote right by its side for easy access. At this moment, I am standing on the surface of Altair 5, said Warden in hushed tones, poised at the base of the ramp. You are witnessing a landmark moment for intergalactic exploration and dramatic Uninet programming. Few sentient lifeforms have set foot on this planet and survived. Or have they? He raised his trademark quizzical eyebrow, which had been surgically enhanced for additional ironic emphasis. The left half reached clear to his hairline when properly employed. It was very big with viewer focus groups. For centuries, he continued, GCO law enforcement agencies have used Altair 5 as a place to exile and ultimately eliminate the cosmos' worst criminals. Yet the most memorable horrors of this maligned land are not the galaxy's irredeemable sociopaths, unrepentant murderers, and relentless sales beings on commission. No, in the tales of our youth, Altair 5 is a world where the rain cuts through flesh and bone, where the very land groans and rages, where the lakes bubble black and thick, and its monstrous residents have been hideously molded by cruel evolutionary hands. He checked the heat detector. While Altair 5's baseline atmosphere ran hotter than some planets, panning the area revealed no movement, no lifeforms giving off heat. Everything looked clear to the horizon. And yet I see I am alone here. A lone figure in the vast, lonely landscape of isolation, far from help or other sentient lifeforms or beings to aid me if I needed help or aid or companionship in this deserted wasteland of desolation. A single, solitary, intrepid, fragrant Altair in rain, grumbled a nearby voice. Color me not surprised. Warden Moonwax whirled to face the sound and found his XJ-33 trembling trepidly, the inn having shaken off somewhere in transit. Before him was a tall, lean, sun-scalded lifeform. The figure stood in the sizzling drizzle, struggling with a long, hook-handed implement. Then, pop! The thing opened up into a leafy canopy that he swung up over his head. Eula? Warden blinked. The guy's complexion was as red as the throat of a crimson-gulleted squink. Hair the general color and consistency of sun-bleached straw poked from under a wide-brimmed hat made of leaves. He was clad in black from shoulder to boot, with the exception of a single sleeve that had been turned into a makeshift weaponry holster. The bare arm was all sinew and scars, and it clutched a bucket made of some large, unfortunate creature's skull. Warden shifted uncomfortably in his boots. This could be none other than Rolim Smorlud, infamous Underworld Society member, supporting actor in There Goes the Galaxy, Altair 5 exile, and by all accounts, dead.
Law, repeated Smorlud. Reg Force, Peace Guard, Constabulary, Right Guard, Clinker, Stanagana, Grey Gang. Cop.
He tried each of these in a number of popular GCU languages, as if Worden might not use TranslatU brand translational products like everyone else in the cosmos. By now, the reporter had recovered from the shock.
Worden Moonwax, he said,
lowering his weapon. He considered extending his hand in greeting, but decided against it. The man's bright orange eyes looked too wild, quick, and calculating to make Worden feel sure of the result.
I'm with Uninet Channel Sciencey 9, host of Myth and Myth Taken, and I already know who you are, Captain Smorlud had walked away, admiring Moonwax's ship with a thoughtful twirl of the leaf canopy. Quasar 920 XE Deluxe? Yes, it is. Captain Smorlud, I was wondering if... Roto-rocket boosters? The man asked.
Of course, Moonwax said, holstering his weapon. Roto-rocket boosters were a staple on these kinds of missions. Everyone knew that.
Since I have you here, I was thinking our viewers would be fascinated to hear how you... Click!
The leaf canopy collapsed, and William Smorlud ducked under the ship's ramp. A voice echoed from beneath.
Up below alarm casings? Yes, I suppose so, Moonwax called. I never checked. Look, I would love to interview...
Smorlud peered around the other side of the ramp.
Titanium retractable cup holders?
No. Moonwax steamed an exasperated sigh onto his visor.
We do have budgets.
Pity, Smorlud said, and he touched the ship in a way that Worden Moonwax thought merited buying it a tank of fuel first.
Captain Smorlud, he began, injecting patience back into his voice. If you could just stop for a moment.
The man did stop, and he tilted his head in a stance that seemed attentive.
I'd love to ask you some questions about your time here on Altair 5. I don't know if you've ever seen our program, but what we do is...
He wasn't listening. At least not to Worden. The man frowned, his eyes distant, angular features set in concern as if hearing out some worrisome inner directives. Worden tried again.
What we do is...
Shh! Smorlud raised a cracked and peeling hand.
Spew's coming.
Spew? But now Moonwax did notice a certain rushing, an almost musical sound coming from somewhere in the vicinity. He scanned the area with his tech, but picked up nothing on any of the systems. It sounded like buckets of crystals showering heavily onto a tinkling glass surface, and it seemed to be growing louder. Growing. Now it was a relentless shriek from all directions, like some out-of-control high-speed hovercraft you could not see. In a moment, Worden Moonwax was off balance and tumbling through the air as William Smorlud knocked him to the ground. Yellow steam blasted up from the place he'd stood seconds before, and in it was a burst of tiny armored insects. They surged toward the men with a predatory drive. Worden Moonwax scrambled backwards on palms and feet, but the insects closed the gap, screaming toward him, wings buzzing, pincers twitching. He screamed too, less in solidarity and more in a good old primal freaking out. William Smorlud pulled a gourd-like canister from his homemade utility belt, held it aloft, pressed its trigger, and Moonwax was enveloped in a cloud of fine mist. Droplets crystallized on his protective helmet and dried firmly on his jumpsuit. Crystals crackled across his visu and hardened onto his landscape lighting vest. Crystals blocked his infrared video and encrusted the chemical emission sensors. Crystals refracted and reflected the magnetic field assessment blippy lights in a way that seemed far too festive for the occasion. The insects showered to the ground in a crunchy sugar coating. It took a moment for Warden's breath to return.
What was... Dunno their name, the convict said, smashing the offenders with a grinding stomp of his boot. Reg Force didn't leave info pills on the local wildlife, did they? So I just call him... Spew, supplied Warden. Good as any.
William Smorlud turned to face the ship.
So, he said, clapping long-fingered hands together, about that lift.
Warden's eyebrow did its duty at the sudden shift in discussion.
Don't Didn't we talk about a lift? I could have sworn we did.
At first, Worden thought the man was being coy, but his tone held genuine surprise.
No, Worden said.
Frowning, Smorlud tapped at a spot in the center of his forehead once, twice, a third time, like he was trying to bump a loose connection into place.
Didn't we discuss how, what with all your pretty equipment covered in spew mobility containment spray, and you unable to continue your filming, you'd have to return to your channel ops and you give me a lift off this monstrosity of an orb?
His eyes met Worden's with a very direct, very disbelieving gaze. Worden found himself, possibly for the first time ever, without words. He shook his head.
Worrisome.
Smorlud withdrew a second gadget from the belt at his waist. It took a moment before Worden realized it was a gun, one made of found objects collected into an uneasy unity of purpose. Worden wasn't sure if the thing were functional or simply theoretical, since it was becoming increasingly clear the guy was a few degrees short of a full orbit. But the man aimed it with assurance as if it worked.
In that case, here's how the discussion goes, he said. I tell you you're going to give me a lift off this planet, and you're going to say, Stella Raleigh, where to? Then we go into the ship and take a short, merry trip to anywhere that is not, in fact, here.
But Worden, who had boldly faced life forms more unnerving than this, even if they hadn't been real, pulled his XJ-33 and aimed.
Interesting,
he said over the hand laser. He wished his visu were still recording. It would have looked so good in post-production.
See, I was thinking it would go more like this. You ask me for a lift, and I say, but you're a notorious criminal serving time on this planet, and it's not my fault you haven't been eaten away by spew, acid rain, or a giant carnivorous fern. So, as a law-abiding citizen of the GCU, working to enlighten and protect the good people of this galaxy, I cannot in good conscience... Daisy, said Smorlud, interrupting his speech.
It would have been such a stellar soundbite, too. Worden felt himself practically spit the word out.
What?
William Smorlud looked up, his keen amber eyes wide.
Giant carnivorous Daisy, the man hissed.
Worden rolled his own eyes.
Look, Fern, Daisy, does it really matter?
But the man pushed back his leaf hat and a shot in rapid succession over Worden's shoulder.
Giant carnivorous Daisy behind.
Raleigh had wanted the ship, wanted it like he wanted a bath and Carcelian pod liquor and a trip to the semi-parlors on Voslagus and to go outside without protective gear and justice, a hearty meal and a day without spew. But he hadn't wanted it this way. His handmade gun barely dented the 30-foot tall, flowering carnivore. Truly, it was the wrong tool for the job. The only upside to the whole ugly thing was that the reporter probably never even knew what him. Altair and Daisies believe in chewing each bite 100 times before swallowing. True. But that first bite, that one's the real sluggard.